All right, my friends, this week on Prof and Dev Play Games, we dig into our Game of the Year for 2024. Stay tuned. All right, my friends, welcome to episode 460, my God, of Prof and Dev Play Games. I am at Prof Plays Games on Blue Sky. Over there is Anthony the Dev. He makes video games, plays them as well. He is at Summer Speak on Blue Sky. How are you doing?
Doing okay. Just wrapping up our winter break here. And my winter break.
Yeah, you're back to work. Kids are back to school.
Yeah, all of it is tomorrow. But it's good. GDQ started, so that's been a fun day today. And
that was great. Yeah.
They started off with kind of a bang. Really good streams today, runs today with, I watched some of the Portal run in the morning, which is fantastic. Portal's just a great speedrunning game. But then Astrobot this afternoon into Wind Waker. Really cool. And we're recording this, and they're going to be doing some Alan Wake 2 while we're recording.
That's right.
I assume they're going to they'll hit their goal, and it will be Night Springs and then the Lake House, both of them.
Yeah, I figured they'd get the DLC. They did for, the DLC for Astrobot is speedrunning, but they did that, and then they showed the final level. We caught the schedule this morning before you posted it, and I sent it around to the family. I was like, I know what we're doing this afternoon. And Astro was awesome. Wind Waker was, it was technically great, but it was less exciting for my daughter. She was like, I don't really want to watch it like this. I'm like, okay. So sure. I didn't finish it. But we watched all of Astrobot, and it was totally awesome.
The Wind Waker one, my kids really enjoyed it. They were laughing just on how absurd the breaks were.
Really crazy, yeah.
Link is really good at Wind Waker speedrunning. I think he's the person. I'm almost certain he's the I saw 5 years ago at GDQ.
Mm-hmm.
Run Wind Waker, and it's insane how much more they figured out in 5 years.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Crazy things to do.
Well, they were saying a couple years ago we did X, and no one does that anymore because now we do this. And it's just like, wow, negative speed or whatever.
Yeah, negative speed. The GBA unplug and replug twice. You might stop watching.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
It's in Ganon's Tower. It's like a bug that makes some other skips work easy, or you have to do, and you need the GBA plugged into the GameCube, but typically it doesn't work in Ganon's Tower at the end. But if you unplug it and replug it twice, it works. Oh my God, that's crazy. But you have to do it every time you load it into a new room. So,
wow.
like speedrunning and then quickly unplugging and plugging in the controller.
That's so funny.
Having to use his nose at one point as well as his fingers to do a skip.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to go back and watch that by myself.
It's toward the end, towards the very end. Yeah.
That's really cool.
It's absurd. But yeah, this whole GDQ looks stacked. There's a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I need to look at what's coming up the rest of the week. I already donated a bit of money today and then bought 3 shirts off of the Yeti.
Yeah. I think tomorrow there's UFO 50. Like a showcase.
Exactly.
A showcase of speedrunning different games there. Metroid Prime tomorrow afternoon. Breath of the Wild. Any % 2 players, 1 controller.
That's so crazy. It's kind of like the IGN did that series where they played Breath of the Wild with split controllers. Yeah. Crazy.
Horizon Forbidden West is the featured game tomorrow night. It's every day there is things. Unicorn Overlord in the morning of Tuesday. Super Mario Brothers. I guess tomorrow's Tuesday is the ones featuring more horror stuff. Dead Rising, Silent Hill 2, remake actually, speedrunning. That's crazy. Already doing speedruns on it. Wednesday is Sonic Day and some Pokemon and Super Mario Brothers Wii, Donkey Kong Country, Tropical Freeze, Fallout New Vegas, Mario 64, Skyrim, Rocket League. Workshop Map Speedrun Showcase.
Interesting.
I know. just wild. Tears of the Kingdom is later in the week on Thursday. All dungeons.
Oh, cool.
Like, there's a ton of stuff here. I'm trying to think of. They're doing Rebirth, but starts at 2:35 a.m.
Oh God. I'll have to get some VOD on that one.
6 hours and 15 minutes to speed run.
Oh my God, I want to see that. That sounds great.
So, I'm like, I mean,
And
that's
4 hours of that is
what
gold
to play
saucer.
Yeah. So much shorter than an actual playthrough, but still a speed run that takes 6 hours and 15 minutes is
That's crazy. I want to see that.
But I think they end on like some really cool stuff. Oh, shout out to Peggle Extreme. They're doing that on Friday.
Nice.
But they end with on Saturday, Crazy Taxi with a live backing band.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'm very curious on that one, which leads into Ocarina of Time, which leads into Echoes of Wisdom, and finishing with Super Metroid.
Oh my, yes, definitely. I
like
love
that. Like
that
whole
sounds
Saturday
great.
afternoon to night, amazing. Like, I'm like, good job, GDQ. Like, this is just a banger of a schedule.
That is really, really cool. I'm gonna be watching it more this year than I ever have before.
Yeah, I'm gonna hopefully if I'm not in meetings.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I'm pretty excited. It's been a bit since they've had this good of a schedule, I will say. So,
it's such a great start. Like I'm usually not watching on the first day, but that's great.
Yeah,
lots to see, and it's cool to have my daughter excited about it. She was just so excited that whole Astrobot speed run.
Yeah, it was neat. I was watching that. It was real neat how they just the skips they're doing and things like that. You're like, you can do that? That's crazy.
That's what we were, because all three of us have played quite a bit of Astrobot, yeah. So we, my daughter and I both have beat the game, played everything. And then my wife's played through the third universe now, or galaxy or whatever. And she was just like, wait, you can do that? Like, she just kept saying the whole time, how can he float so long? Like, well, there are 3 steps. You jump as long as you can, and then you punch to get a little bit extra distance, and then you start floating with your laser feet.
Yeah.
Versus her method is to jump and then laser as quickly as possible. It's like, that's not gonna do it.
Yeah.
So
got max. Yes. There is depth of skill to that game, and speedrunning always shows off.
Yeah, it's really cool. Really, really cool. More stuff we'll be watching this week for sure.
Yeah.
We'll be seeing some more. Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll see more Game of the Year candidates being speedrun this time. It is interesting to see the Game of the Year from several outlets speedrun on the first day with Astrobot. But we will be talking about our games of the year this episode. And for those who are new to our the way we do it here, we basically have a top 5. And we go through our top 5, talk about our top 5, and we mathematically determine what our collective game of the year is. So for a top 5, number 5 on the list is worth 1 point. Number 4 is worth 2. Number 3 is worth 3. Number 2 is worth 4, and number 1 is worth 5. So once we go through all of our lists and talk about it, then we figure out which items are usually in common between our lists and then add up the points. This year, I'm going to guess we have exactly 1 game in common, but I'm curious to see. Beyond the top 5, we have several honorable mentions, 5 or maybe a little more. We'll talk about a couple games we didn't touch this year that if we had, probably would have been on our list. And then I have my daughter's top 5 to read, which is great. Anything to add to the rigmarole there?
Nope. I agree with you. I bet there's only 1 overlap. Yeah, I imagine.
That's what I think. I think I know what our game of the year is right now.
Probably.
We'll see. Why don't you start? Give us your number 5.
All right. No honorable mentions first. We're just going right into.
You know what? Yeah, we could do it either way. We could do honorable mentions first and then go into the top 5. That's a good idea.
Yeah, let's do honorable mentions. And some of these is like if I had played, maybe if I played part of it, but there's a lot of like clearly I didn't give it the time to play more of it, so honorable mention right now. First one on my list is Kunitsugami. I really enjoyed that game quite a bit. I never finished it. It was really cool though.
I thought that was on your top 5 for sure.
Dark Horse. I mean, it was probably number 6. It hovered,
or
between 5 and 6, and I feel like it kind of just just quite didn't make it, although it is a really neat game. I think you can pick it up reasonably priced on sales on Steam right now or anywhere that happen. It's well worth it. Tons of content, neat mechanics, neat tower defense action game. Probably my only real criticism with it is mechanically the action combat gets a little bit samey overall. There's not I don't think enough variety to your character and what you can do, but the actual like tower defense mechanics are a ton of fun. Crazy, weird, probably very divisive art direction.
Yeah, that's the thing that stood out to me the most as being not for me is the art.
It's weird. Which is fine. I was fine with it and appreciated someone just trying to be like, no, we're going to make this look different. It stands out. Incredibly focused on Japanese mythology. Yeah, I was happy. I was happy to pick it up and happy to play through it. It also plays really well on the Steam Deck. I'll say that.
Nice.
That's where I mostly played it, was commuting using the Steam Deck. So, yeah, good game. Recommend it to anyone who likes tower defense and looking for something a little different.
Yeah, a lot of people love that game this year. So that's good to hear that you liked it.
Yeah. Other honorable mentions, and this is one that would be if I'd played more. Echo of Wisdom. I barely touched it overall. My daughter played all of it and loved it. It counts for something. That's why it's an honorable mention. I do need to play it. I just did not find time, and especially in these past 2 weeks, I only finished 2 games where I was hoping to finish more, only because those games were very big.
You chose the most massive games of the year to play at the end here.
Yeah, I needed to finish them. I'm glad I did. But Echoes of Wisdom did not get time there. I am happy that Echoes of Wisdom came out. It exists. It's been received really well, and I hope there's more games.
Me too.
In that series now, I guess, or
that like I don't know what's the right word, like
style?
Genre of Zelda, you know?
Yeah, sub Zelda genre. Yeah, I think it's neat. I didn't actually watch the end of the game. I'm curious if they leave it open for direct sequels.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Or
either.
if they'll just if this did well enough, just make other Echoes of Wisdom type games, different Zelda timelines, basically. Like this one is very Link to the Past era stylings.
Yep.
But I mean, you could easily do something like this in Ocarina of Time area or Breath of the Wild time.
Yeah.
Even Wind Waker. That could be fun.
Give us the Sheik-led game next.
Guess so.
That
I
could
was
be cool.
never into Sheik that much. Never did it for me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, Ninja Zelda, okay. But I feel like that would be the next like Muso.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. That's more.
That would be a fun one. That would fit. You're like,
nice
yeah, I'm like, or just much more action oriented.
So they would go through like a hack and slash game.
Yeah,
like Darksiders, but with Sheik.
That would be hilarious. Who knows what they're gonna do next with this? I guess we'll know soon.
Yep, this month I'm sure.
I assume there has to be some Zelda coming out in the next time to sell some new hardware. But other honorable mention, Satisfactory. That came out.
What the fuck? I also thought that was in your top 5. My God.
No, it was real hard to pick my top 5. I'm gonna give.
This is a roller coaster already.
I mean, I could have easily done 10.
Yeah.
Like there's so many games. Satisfactory. I bounced. It's really good. Came out of early access finally. It is the epitome of just watching automation go and how satisfying that is. It's just really funny how it all comes together and you're like, yes, my conveyor belts are moving very efficiently and I did that and this is great. It's like immediate feedback when things are working and immediate feedback when things are not working.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really is a game that like really rewards, like a single player game that really, really rewards mastery of it.
Yeah.
And it immediately you feel the mastery of like when you do it, like, holy crap, built all this crap and it's just working. And I feel like I still have so much of that game to touch further on. Like, I know I probably only maybe a third of the way through its entire tech tree. It's
Wow.
such an enormous game.
Well, you put, what, 40 hours into that game this year? More?
Let's see.
I feel like you played that quite a bit.
Oh, I
But
did.
maybe I'm misremembering.
50 hours.
Yeah, Jesus.
And yeah, I was on like tier 3 or tier 4.
That game has a lot for people who dig into it.
Oh, there's so much. I didn't even get the trains.
Wow.
Like,
okay.
And like, yeah, his whole train system where you can start like really interconnecting different parts of the planet together via train network and like automating trains, taking huge amounts of things from one place to another. Yeah, it's about just creating an entire like planet-sized factory. And yeah, it's deep. It's in its name. It's very satisfying. They did a great job, and it's really neat. Without it finally coming out of early access and actually landing really, really well. Also, female protagonist.
There's a protagonist in this game?
Yeah, you play your character that you're playing is an actual character.
Oh, that's like God mode kind of thing. Oh,
no, you're a character.
Very
person
cool.
running around. And all the Clark has been a female protagonist. So
love it. That's great.
Yeah.
I fucking thought it was God mode. That's great.
No, there's no God mode. Like, you want to get to the other side of the planet, you got to run and explore. And
okay.
There's enemies. You have to fight. Yeah, there's enemies you have to like defend yourself against. Yeah, it's a full thing. It'd be way easier with God mode. I'll tell you that.
Dear listener, you can tell this game is not my type of game. I didn't even watch a second of gameplay.
Other all-around missions, I only have 2 more. Helldivers 2, very, very good. I really enjoyed the time I did play with it, which wasn't a ton, but online multiplayer isn't just usually my biggest thing. But it's really good, and I have a lot of respect for how they've managed the game and the community and updated it. This era had just kind of like doing what the pinnacle of what they were building to do.
Absolutely.
From all their magic stuff and just getting to here and being like, yeah, this is, I see the roots here. A lot like with Blade and Baldur's Gate 3, I'll be honest. Similar thing of being like, oh, I see your past games here and I see you executing on those past games at a quality bar you never were able to hit before.
Yeah, right.
And Helldivers does that. It still get a ton of players. When new updates come out, I still hear about it. I see people play it. Coworkers are still playing a fair amount of it. I know they've had some issues over like almost a year now, right? Since it's been out.
Yeah, it came out in, I think, February.
Yeah. So they've had some growing pains trying to figure out how to like manage this success, and Sony didn't help on some of that.
Sony fucked them over and over again. Then they quickly pivoted to fix the things for the most part.
Yeah. But they have been very responsive, and they do listen quite a bit to the community and try to keep the overall game pretty exciting week to week, even. Maybe even day to day sometimes.
I was going to say day to day, yeah, because they have new things dropping and new meta events happening.
Yeah, their ability to update the game and do like unique events is pretty incredible for a game like this. I think Helldivers 2 will be incredibly influential on other multiplayer games in the next couple years.
I just think it's so incredible how they can turn team killing basically fucking into something that's just a very important part of the game and not have everyone piss at each other for the most part.
No, for the most part. Man, such a ridiculous game. It's a story generator, and that's what makes it great.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then the last honorable mention for me, and this would have probably been 10 on the full list, is Dawn Trail. It doesn't land as well for me as the end of Final Fantasy XIV's like Endwalker story. But towards the end of Dawn Trail, it started getting pretty good again, and I'm pretty excited for where the story goes and what they're building. But it's Final Fantasy XIV. It continues to be high quality. I would say it's the best MMO on the market right now, still. I think of all the Final Fantasies, it's probably the one that understands the IP the best in a lot of ways. Just in the amount of homage and paying respect to everything. But they understand the silliness and the hopefulness. And also typically not bogging, but they kind of cut away and not bogging you down with a lot of the stupid mini games unless you really want to engage with it.
Yeah,
I mean, they have them, but you don't have to engage with them.
Yeah. Well, it's all in the DNA of Final Fantasy.
Yeah. I think it still just shows you like, yep, these people know what Fantasy is as a brand, and they celebrate it so well in these in these expansions, and I hope 14 just continues on. They continue to add more and more aspects to it. Dawn Trail, like, in a weird way, was tangentially like associated with Final Fantasy IX in some of its characters and story elements, which was interesting. Not as blatant as like the Crystal Tower in don't remember what expansion that was in original Final Fantasy. I think that was like, well, the Crystal Tower stuff was there at the beginning, but it was really focused on Shadowbringers, which is a huge part of early Final Fantasy. I think 3 or 4, can't remember. But Dawn Trail was like, oh yeah, you're riffing off 9 in this one, which is interesting to see. So,
and that was Sakaguchi's last one, right?
Yeah. That was the one where he's like, I want to do one more that's not really leaning into the sci-fi aspect, where 7 and 8 are much more modern sci-fi. Right. 9 is fantasy, full on back to its roots kind of fantasy. I love 9. It's fantastic.
That's one I'm going to dig into this year. Be my second year of Final Fantasy.
There you go. It's just a big game. It's real big. Real big. Holy cow. But yeah, so those are my honorable mentions, kind of runner-ups that just couldn't make it into the top 5.
Well, let me dig into mine a bit here. Same thing. These are ones that at least a couple of these were actually on the top 5. One as recently as a week ago. In fact, I recorded a top 5 video project just to kind of practice, and I thought I had my top 5 locked in, and I definitely didn't. So if you have seen that video, tonight is going to be a little different. But one of them here that was on the list for most of the year and got kicked off at the last second here is UFO 50. UFO 50 basically would be like a number 6.
See that?
It was on the list for a long time, and then it got kicked off. UFO 50 is incredible, and I've only played or dabbled in probably half of the games. And every time that I fire up a game, I'm just impressed about how much they dug into like the one mechanic they are trying to work on in that game. Like Waldorf's Journey is an example of that, where you're like a walrus. And it actually reminds me of Unpleasant Pony a little bit, where the goal is to jump across the screen and you're kind of trying to angle your jump so you land on other things.
Sure.
And then continue the jumping. It's not quite like Unpleasant Pony. In fact, I found Unpleasant Pony gameplay much easier to get into and stick with. But they just choose something and they just iterate on it. I guess it was announced 8 years ago, UFO 50, and it's just a collection of 50 games. There are RPGs in there. There are co-op games. There are 2-player competitive games in there. tracing this fake video game company's lineage from their first game, let's say mid 80s, and all the way through to their last game, which let's say, into the 90s or whatever. And you kind of see sequels of some games and then iterating on their ideas and improving them. And they're full-fledged fucking games. There's like a full-fledged Final Fantasy type game in there. It's like a 16 to 18 hour RPG as just one of the games. And it's just such an impressive feat. I know Derek Yu was one of the ones who worked on a lot of the games. And then the guy who did Downwell, I can't remember his name. And there's a couple more. And they just pumped out these games. Any of these, I feel like, could have been a singular release on their own and done quite well. I think UFO 50 was a little bit hamstrung in, first of all, that whole idea of like for Christmas, I got it. I forgot what the fuck the name of it is. It's a little like a Game Boy SP kind of mock-up.
Oh yeah.
Emulator. Amberneck, thank you. And you open it up and it comes with like 200 games or whatever. And you're just like kind of just test them all out and check them all out for a little bit, not too much, just a little bit here, a little bit there. That's kind of what is happening here. You just kind of dig in a little bit on each one until you find one that really sticks with you. And there's just like this impossible game whose name is escaping me right now, where like the D-pad controls your movement in some direction, and then the face buttons control your movement in the other direction, and it's controlled very differently than a normal game. It just makes your gamepad behave differently than you're used to, and you have to rewire your brain. And it hit me just right. It's like so obtuse, and I was like, I'm gonna fucking beat this game, and I did. And I was just like, holy shit, this is an accomplishment. The 2024 is like the year of like, I became a different gamer. I'm playing different games. I'm more patient. I'm, I don't know, challenging myself in ways that I, don't normally do. And UFO 50 was kind of the epitome of that, where there was so much different stuff in there. And it's just such an amazing accomplishment. I don't know if you even touched it this year.
I did. It's on my things of I wish I could spend more time with it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I barely touched it and tried just maybe only like 5 or 6 games total.
Yeah. Every time I fired it up, I thought of you, because it's like a game jam on steroids, man.
Oh, it is. Yeah. That's also why it's kind of intimidating.
It is. Honestly, it is. There's so much there. This is a game that I'm going to continue to just dabble in for years. I don't need to rush through everything. I know there's a lot of games on it that people just absolutely love that I haven't even touched yet.
Grimstone is one that I've seen come up over and over. Game 40, and it's like it's a JRPG.
Right. I think that's the Final Fantasy one that I've heard about that I haven't.
Yeah, it's very, very similar to like a old school Final Fantasy. Yep. And I'm like, I want to see this. What did they do? Yeah. Wish I could spend more time with this. If I had, it would have probably made it somewhere on a list.
Yeah. Well, it was there. It got kicked off, and I'll talk about that later. Another one that was on my list for a lot of the year, but I eventually kicked it off, was Shadow of the Erd Tree. Shadow of the Erd Tree itself, excluded from Elden Ring, was just so well designed. Like, there's a new mechanic in that part of the game where you collect these Scadu tree fragments that like power you up, basically. Like, you do more damage, you take less damage from enemies or whatever. Your health increases, so it has like a different mechanic to buff your character. So if you really want to make that part of the game hard, just don't pick any up and just go through and fight the bosses. It's really well designed. It's more Elden Ring, of course, but the level design is still top notch. The boss design is just rough, really brutal. But there's more story. There was more story in that piece. So if you're looking for Elden Ring lore, that's more than just, deciphering items or descriptions or whatever. There were actually NPCs with story. Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree is where I actually really learned how to play the game. Where when I went into that realm, there was one, I think it's a Black Knight Jail or Black Jail Knight.
Yeah, it's the first thing right there.
Yeah, where it's like you go in, you can't use your mimic, you could summon someone to go with you, but when you go in, you don't have that mimic, you can't use it, so it's just you. And I just took it as a challenge, like I am going to beat this boss, this mini boss or whatever. And it took me like 3 nights, like just really learning it, really learning the dance, and learning how to beat him on my own. And I felt like I accomplished so much. I refused to summon any other help. I just did it myself. And after the third night, when I beat that, it's such an accomplishment, such a rush, which everyone talks about when they beat a FromSoft boss, basically. And then I took that knowledge back into the base game and just started whooping up on bosses. Which is why it's in my honorable mentions and not on my top 5, is I have a really hard time distinguishing the fun I had with Shadow of the Erdtree from Elden Ring, because I probably put another 30 hours into Elden Ring and probably 15 into Shadow of the Erdtree. And it was all, I was going back and forth between the areas, tracking down new weapons and tracking down different things that I hadn't done in the base game when I had beaten it, basically a year ago. So in my head, it's hard to separate the two. So I'm not sure how much of the fun was Shadow of the Erdtree by itself, or really just like it was Elden Ring. So it's hard for me to kind of put it on my list for that reason. But I enjoyed Shadow of the Erdtree. I keep looking at it on my my menu bar on PS5, and I never open it back up. I haven't opened it up since probably August or something. Suffering a little bit from the same thing that you had, where it's so dark that after a while I'm like, okay, I've had enough. I just can't. I don't enjoy being in that world, despite enjoying that gameplay tremendously. If it was like a lot of a lighter kind of game, I think it would be like one of my favorite games of all time. But the darkness is so rough.
It's hard. It seeps
really
into you. I mean, they do what they get, the vibe they're going for. It's just a hard vibe for me to live in for a long period of time.
Exactly. And it's great. I mean, for little pieces, and God, they do what they do so fucking well. It's so good. Another one that's on my honorable mentions, and it's the same thing as yours for the same reason. It's Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. I played probably 6 hours or so, both with my daughter on her save file and then mine. She's actually further. We're further on her save file than we are on mine. And I really, really liked it. I know a lot of people didn't like the combat where you had to like conjure up an echo to do the fighting for you, but I liked that a lot because it made the combat a puzzle. And then everything else is a puzzle. The whole fucking game is a puzzle, and I really, really like it. I love that Zelda's the protagonist finally. I love that they're doing that. I love that they're taking the freedom of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and putting it back into a 2D environment. We're back to having some dungeons. I thought the dungeons were, the ones that I did were clever. I'm back at Hyrule Castle right before you basically lose the disguise. That's where I'm at for listeners who have played the game. If I had finished it, it would be in my top 5. I really enjoyed it. I know there was a lot of people who enjoyed this game, but there were also some people who didn't for a number of reasons. And I was more on the side of the folks who enjoyed it. So I hope this is a starting place. I know it was mostly Grezzo. So Grezzo cutting their teeth on making their own Zelda adventure, which is pretty cool. I think the next Zelda games we're going to see are probably remasters of Tears and Breath.
Yeah, so I think those are next. But hopefully Grezzo will do more.
I hope basically. So. I want to see more.
Proven themselves. I mean, like, we now have another team that can make spin-off Zelda games.
But I hope they see it as a success, because I know it wasn't. So. It's been on a number of lists. Obviously, not topping most of those lists. And I don't know how it sold, but I don't know. I hope it was a success. I'd like to see more. Another one that's on my list, if I had played more, it would be on my top 5. And another game that is on my top 5 proves that point. It's Unicorn Overlord. I absolutely love the demo. I talked about this last week. Yep. I played it. So I mainlined the demo, and then I, for some reason, didn't want to open the collector's edition. So I just didn't continue playing. The stupidest fucking reason.
It's a beautiful collector's edition.
It is. It really is. So hope they'll open it this year. But I really like Unicorn Overlord, especially on the back of Final Fantasy. Actually, that's not true. I played Overlord first because I played it in March, and I played Final Fantasy in April. But the idea of the gambits, basically, where you're kind of giving your characters things to do, if-then statements, basically.
Yeah.
I thought, I liked it in 12 decently. I really liked it in Unicorn Overlord. I thought it was more refined there. And then also the positioning of your characters, the front, do more damage. I think this is typical, but do more damage, take more damage versus the back where you're, ranged protected. Yeah, exactly. I thought the story was good. I really liked the overworld, the things that you can do. It felt like there was a lot to find. There was a lot of scenarios to get involved in. And then I also I like games that allow you to speed things up, so you could like speed the battles up because you know how they're going to go.
Skip them,
or you could even skip them. Okay, yeah,
you can just hit it instead of saying like I want to watch it. You can just be like, I don't even want to watch. Just show me the results.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I love that.
That's great. Because I don't want to watch all the battles. Some of them I wanted to watch. Some of them I want to watch because I want to see how the tactics line up. Make sure that my units are doing the right thing.
Yep.
And sometimes you're just like, I don't care. It's good. These are fine. I know I'm going to stomp them. Stomp. Move on. Thank you. It was very respectful of time in that aspect.
Well, I love the games where grinding is something you have to do. So then the games give you an option to kind of make that faster because God, I mean, maybe some people love grinding slowly. I fucking don't. I understand the point of it and I want to get the upgrades or whatever, but God, I don't want it to take forever. That'll make me bounce off a game more than anything. So that was really cool to see. And the last one on my list is the one that's still I guess it's a small dagger in my heart now because I kicked the ever-living shit out of you in Fantasy Critic, but Balatro, not picking that up early on in the year. It's in my honorable mentions. I played this exclusively with my wife. We probably played 10 rounds, had a really good time, just kind of puzzling through like what order the jokers we would put them in and how we would lay down the cards. And playing it together was awesome. I didn't play it enough to get addicted to it, thank God. But I think I would have if I played more. It's just incredibly well designed. I love poker anyways, but then to take poker and turn it into this other thing, it's just so simple and so fucking genius. It's just mind blowing that no one had thought of it before. It's just so good. So that's on my honorable mentions as well. Really quickly before we get in the top 5, I'm just going to list the 3 games that I didn't play, but if I did, they would have been on my list. And I'm not going to talk much about them. I'm just going to say that if I had played Metaphor or ReFantazio, it would have been on my top 5. I know that. Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door also played a little bit of that as well. Probably played 6 hours of each, and if I had really gone through both of them, they would be in the list somewhere. Last one is Hades 2. I played about 5 or 6 hours. It's great. I'm waiting for 1.0 to even talk about putting it on any list. I know you are too. So
yeah, that's what sits with me.
Yeah.
For myself, there was a few that I like not on my list, but probably would be if I played. Astrobot being the number one there, of being like probably if I played this, it would be there. I've seen enough of it to know that it's an incredibly well made game.
Holy shit!
Yeah, very very cool. UFO 50, which I mentioned earlier, if it would probably be on my list if I played more. This is a weird one that maybe you have never heard of. Caves of Cud.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it.
It's out of early. I think this year came out of early access. Holy crap! I've seen coworkers play it and posting their stories. If I had dove into this game, it would definitely be in my top 5. But I'm very intimidated to actually play because holy cow, is it insane.
It's like a Dwarf Fortress kind of game, right?
Kind of, yeah. But with like way more story and procedural story.
That's crazy.
But like, it just scratches the itch. I love like NetHack and Dwarf Fortress type games where there's just huge amounts of content and systemic interactions between all that content and just constantly discovering new things. So it's on my list to play this year. And then the last one, which I actually got for Christmas and I need to play, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink.
Oh, nice.
Which came out very early in 2024. And I played the demo was really cool. It just never found like there's a lot of other stuff coming out. I just couldn't really fit it in. But now I have it. I have it for PS5 and will probably be playing it in the next week or 2. But it was really a really neat, like, fast-paced, kind of like action RPG. Like there's loot and gear and the whole thing. Just with a more Japanese anime influence going on.
Yeah, it has like a Monster Hunter endgame, doesn't it?
Yeah, it has some stuff going on like that. So very curious to dig into that one and see how that would have fared overall.
Yeah, that's one that I'm interested in too. That's one that right before the new year hit, I picked up a couple games. before my budget took effect, and that was one of them for PS5. So I'm curious to dig into that one too.
Well, we should do some multiplayer on that at some point.
That'd be fun.
I know that's a big piece of it is like multiplayer missions.
Oh, cool. Yeah, let me know.
Co-op.
We could dig into that at the same time.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's everything on our honorable mention and games we didn't play, but if we did, we would be doing something with them. We're going to dig into our top 5. Before we get there, one more list. My daughter wants to let everyone know her top 5. Her number 1 game of the year is Astrobot with a fucking bullet.
I'm not surprised.
Oh my God. She has the same affliction I have where play a game for 5 hours, bounce to another one. She's stuck with Astrobot and keeps coming back to it. Number 2, her number 2 2024 game of the year is Mario Odyssey.
Okay.
Number 3 is Lego Horizon Adventures. She fucking loved it. We beat that together, and it was really a really fun time. Her number 4 2024 game of the year is Stray, which we played twice this year. And then her number 5 game of the year, following the same vein as some of the other. Do you have a guess on what her number 5 game might be?
Kena?
It's Kena Bridge of Spirits. Yeah. So 2 of her 5 games came out this year. The other 3 came out in other years. But these are the games she played the most this year and had the most fun with. So fuck it. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, that's all that matters to her right now.
Absolutely. Yep. And Stray and Kena were both in Astrobot as bots, and she was over the moon.
I'm sure.
Very cool. Well, thanks for indulging me there. Why don't we dig into our top 5? Why don't you tell us your number 5 of the year?
Okay, so number 5. We mentioned this game, Balatro.
Oh shit! It made the top 5.
It made top 5. I was thinking through it. Didn't make it higher because I know myself. I want story games more than anything, but from a mechanical standpoint, Balatro is amazing. Absolutely, like you said, addicting. That mind-blowing experience when you realize like the order of your jokers matters and you can reorder them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, holy cow. Open
order of operations. Holy shit.
Yeah, it matters. And actually, like the order of cards in your hand sometimes matters. Depending on the jokers you have. Absolutely ridiculous game that has like starts out and you're like, okay, it's poker, and then the depth just keeps on hitting. I unlocked a bunch of different decks, so I had different kind of different effects and different strategies I needed to do going in. I've still continued to fire up a game here and there of it throughout the year. It's just fun to play a hand here and there and just see how it goes. It's kind of, I really enjoy it. Mechanically, it speaks to me on just the simplicity level and a polish for simple pixel art graphics and the whole thing. And I'm kind of just surprised how well it took off everybody else as well. Like,
oh yeah, man.
It's a weird little game, and to see that like just like break into more mainstream gaming is kind of crazy.
I mean, to see it be nominated for the top, Keeley's game of the year,
Yeah. And it's deserved. It's a neat mechanic game. Does a lot with a little. Constant, like, feeling like pretty consistent, always something new. Finding new jokers, new card types, building really weird decks, like nuking entire suits from your deck. Like just weird stuff that just keeps building and just have crazy runs. Some short that are terrible, and those are usually over quick. And then, which is a key piece of game design like this, is that if you're having a bad run, it ends quickly. Like, you don't feel like you're just having to nurse something along. It's like, this is just not working out. We're dead. Next run. Like, the game's very good about that, of just being like, no, the runs that actually last are the ones that are good. And you're having a good time with. So, overall, number 5 for me. This was the one that kind of was bouncing around, like, do I want this on here or not? But I do. I think it's incredibly well deserved. All of its praise. I am now going to be watching whatever game the dev does next, which is funny because they don't put their name out at all.
Right?
Like, they don't accept. They weren't there at the Game Awards to accept any awards.
I heard that they were there.
Well, were they? Just not.
Yeah, I heard they were in the audience. They were there, and no one knew who they were. Yeah,
but they weren't going to go on stage or give
no,
any speeches
exactly.
or anything.
No one knows who they are. I mean, many people don't.
Funny. That's funny. And then you
Boy.
get Ben Starr to play the clown in your
clown,
commercials.
The fucking Joker. You're like, you listen to that. Tell me if you know who that is. And I was, I guess it was a video, but I was just listening to it. I was like, God, it sounds like Ben Starr. Oh man,
it is. Oh, it's hilarious. He posted like really silly outtakes on some social media.
Seriously,
of
that's
that
cool.
shoot, and it's hilarious.
Oh my
banana.
So good. He's everywhere, man.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my number 5.
All right. Well, my number 5 has not changed for a long time. It's been locked in on the top 5 since I played this game this summer. When I went to Humboldt, I took my Steam Deck and I had heard a bunch of buzz about this game, so I decided to pick it up. It sounded extremely my shit. And it mostly was. This is 1000 times resist or 1000x resist, which is basically an adventure game. It's a walking simulator adventure game where you are trying to advance. There's 10 chapters you're trying to advance through by having conversations, figuring out what the thing in the environment you're supposed to do next, kind of thing. It was the developer of Sunset Visitor. It was published by Fellow Traveler Games. Fellow Traveler Games tends to publish narrative games for the most part, as far as I can tell. So you are a character called the Watcher, and the Watcher is a clone of the quote-unquote All-Mother. The All-Mother is a woman from, at some point in the past, I can't remember exactly when, who survived a pandemic. The pandemic was brought, spoilers, obviously we're going to be talking about spoilers for these games. This is the setup for the game, so it's not a huge spoiler, but the pandemic was brought by aliens. The aliens came down to Earth, basically, and one of the wonderful treasures they brought humanity was this pandemic, which was a disease where you just, if you catch it, you leak water out your face. Basically, you just cry, you literally cry yourself to death. So there was so much of this game that was rooted in coronavirus, basically, and COVID, and what happened to all of us during the pandemic. The characters are masked in this game for the most part, and I'm someone who still masks everywhere I go, so that's something I really connected with. There's a huge immigrant story here. These are characters that are from the Hong Kong diaspora. There's a lot about the Hong Kong protests that happened during COVID here. And there's, there are high school students when this thing happened. And then, things happen to their friends, their family, everyone dies. This one person survives, and they clone this person. They make lots and lots and lots of clones of this person, and they live, if I recall correctly, underground. And then they build a society of these clones. There are other people who survived as well, and there are clones of those characters as well. But it's mostly characters that are clones of the All-Mother. And this is not a spoiler. I mean, it could be, I guess, but the game starts this way. You, as one of the clones, kills the All-Mother. You stab her, and you're kind of going backwards through the story, through this interesting time mechanic where you're going through different areas, and then you can swap to, like, I'm going to make up the years, but like it's 2077 right now, but then hit L1 and you go back to like 1999 or, in the same spot. So you're finding stuff in the environment through the different years to kind of piece together the story of what happened. So there's Watcher, there's Seeker, there's Healer, Knower. These are all clones of the All-Mother who have different roles in society, and they're basically named by their role. And the whole thing starts with your character Watcher, and I can't remember the other person. I think it was Fixer, maybe, where they're like in a relationship, basically, or at least it alludes that they're in a relationship. But Fixer, through her communion, through her digging into who the All-Mother was and what happened, what really happened, blah, 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 realizes they've been lied to and is trying to like get other people to realize that the society that they're living in now has been a lie. And then your character snitches on that character, and you do the snitching. You have a dialogue choice where you choose the snitching, and then that character's dead, and then shit goes bad from there. And that's all in the very beginning, like in probably the first 2 hours, and that sets up everything that comes after, which I won't dig into.
Okay.
But there's so much story, so much character to dig into. The story is the thing in this game. The mechanics of the actual game, where you're walking around trying to figure out where to go, getting lost in some of these kind of convoluted maps, is not the thing. It was not super exciting. I think that's what pulls it back from being higher on the list, because this is the narrative of the year. This is the story of the year. I don't understand how this wasn't nominated for a Keeley for narrative of the year. This is it. This is the narrative of the year. But the rest of it, I can see the graphics are, it's a 3D, I don't know, maybe like a PS2-ish kind of thing. The mechanics of like traversal, the time mechanic thing, everything is just kind of like, it's okay. But the story, there's so much. It's like there's so much to the story that people are connecting to that I just can't, because of my experience. Like I'm a white cis dude. Like I can't connect to Asian diaspora or LGBTQ plus. Like that's not who I am. But I can connect to the pandemic stuff, and that really hit me. So people who are being hit by the other things, there are so many things, so many themes being carried by this game that hit people. And if you're hit by multiple of those things, this is a heavy, just
Sure.
Not heavy and like depressing, like it doesn't end in a depressing way. But there's just a lot. It's carrying a lot.
Yeah.
And I feel like I kept thinking as I was going that they're going to fuck this up. This is too much to carry in one game, but they didn't. And I feel like the 10 chapters were pretty well paced, to where it never, every time there was a new chapter, like there was kind of something else to do. So it never really felt like it was just doing the same thing. There was like a variation of the same thing. And that was neat. So overall, I played this game. I think I went to Humboldt in June. And I played it all. I thought that's all I played on that trip, and it stuck with me the rest of the year. And everyone that I could tell to play this game or watch it, please do. God, it's great. And now they just had their with all the game of the year lists coming out, they're on a ton of them. So they just announced that they had their best day of sales that they've had all year, and people are just discovering it now. And I'm so glad, because it's a small studio. It's a fucking it's a I don't know if esoteric's the right word, but like it's a weird fucking game, and it's not something that's like super mainstream, but it really deserves all the flowers it's getting. So it is my number 5.
Nice. My number 4 is another one we've mentioned already. Unicorn Overlord.
Nice.
This was another one that I wanted to finish in my winter break.
Yeah,
but
the big games.
Just didn't get a chance to finish it. I don't have that much more in it. I think people I've talked to that have friends that have beat it said I have about 10 hours left.
Okay.
I played enough of it to know, like, I really connect with Vanillaware games overall. And this, I love the art and the look of it. It is the opposite kind of story that like 13 Sentinels was. 13 Sentinels is very much what you just talked about in like 1000 Resist in a lot of ways, of pretty high concept, weird, not kind of time traveling, but lots of character, and they're carrying a lot in 13 Sentinels. Unicorn Overlord is like, no, this is a much more simple, like, fantasy story. You've heard the story, but it's executed well. I like the characters a ton. But then getting into like the meat of the gameplay, I was not expecting after doing the demo and then getting it, a real-time strategy game in a lot of ways. Because that's what the big part of the battles are you moving units around in a real-time manner around a map and trying to engage other enemies, and then this like auto battler kind of system where you're setting the tactics and everything, and it comes together really well, especially once I started getting real mastery over that like real-time strategy aspect of it. And they throw, like, as you play the game more and more, they change that RTS part of the game up quite a bit. They throw a lot of new mechanics pretty continually in there of like things you need to do or need to consider while you're moving around, places you need to get, towers, ballistas, catapults, castles, the whole thing. Like there's like a bunch of stuff you learn, and they tweak that continuously as you go in the different zones. Loved the tactics part of it. I spent so much time setting up my units, upgrading them, unit classes, like figuring like, okay, how do I want to set this unit up with what type of units front and back? Which units do I want to upgrade so they can have more characters in them? Who do I want leading that unit? Because whichever unit leads it, whichever character leads a unit gives that unit special like abilities. It affects the speed that they can move. They can fly if they're on a horseback. Different abilities you can use in the RTS side of things. There's a lot going on in this game. And it's such a silly name of a game. I love it.
It is memorable. Like it stood out as like, oh god, it's like a Square Enix fucking random name generator kind of thing. But actually, it's holds up better than a triangle strategy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's something to say. I think there's more people connect with the characters here more than triangle strategy. I would say like the story is fairly simple fantasy, but that story doesn't overstay its welcome. That's the thing with it. You're not sitting there for huge, long, dialogue-filled cutscenes of just bad. It's like, no, we'll be efficient. We'll get through this and get you back to like the meat of the game. And you mentioned like just exploring the world. There's so much to discover in that world. It is huge. You get into new areas and you're like, I gotta explore every little corner of this because there are, I'm sure, special weapons and characters I can recruit. And when speaking of character recruitment, it has meaningful choices there. There are, if you have a lot of choice on like, do I recruit this character or do I banish them kind of ways. Like different playthroughs, you'll have different characters depending on the story choices you make. And they run with it, and that's just part of it. And I appreciate games that just commit to that on this. And they're like, yeah, if you want to play it again, and you can choose different characters and choose a different option on this choice. You don't want to execute this character. You actually want to bring them into your fold.
That's something that I had some difficulty with towards the end of the demo. Was there was a character that had that choice, and I was like, oh no, this is the part of games that I don't like, where I feel like I'm missing out on something if I don't keep them or whatever. But I was like, the way that this story just played out, this guy's fucking dead. Like I'm going to live with that choice, and that felt really cool.
I think I know what you're talking about, and yes. You're like, no, this dude's just evil. I don't like him.
Exactly
which is fine, but if you want to do a run where you're like, no, I'm going to recruit these evil people. I'm curious. I don't think it will drastically change the story, but you'll have different options in combat and how you approach things going forward. Yeah, overall, this came out early in the year, and I'm glad to see it getting as much praise as it's had over the year. And hopefully it's been successful for Vanillaware as well. So that's my number 4.
Awesome. Well, that's well worthy. And I'm looking forward to digging back into that one this year. All right. My number 4 is a latecomer to the list. And it's the one that I think if I had more time with it, it might be higher on my list, although probably not. But this is the game of all the games of anything I've talked about tonight. For you, Anthony, and for the listener and anyone, I'm just fucking begging you to play this game. And it's Tactical Breach Wizards. Tactical Breach Wizards.
Yes.
Anthony, it is so your shit. You have to fucking play this game. You like sometime this year, you've got to make time for it. It is like a 12-hour game.
I know I do.
It's, I've heard it it came out in August, and I've heard so many people talk about it so much. I'm like, this sounds extremely my shit. It's like XCOM Into the Breach, but with fucking like the best writing of the year, people have said. And I was like, okay, I really liked Into the Breach. I liked how you could see what was going to happen in the future. I liked how you could push things around. XCOM is fun. One of the developer is Tom Francis, and he used to work at PC gamer or Eurogamer or some whatever. And he loves XCOM so much, but there's so much about XCOM that he wished he could see simplified. So he did. He simplified it and worked through his ideas with the developer of Into the Breach, just talking through these ideas that he had about how he could simplify XCOM, and the ideas that come from Into the Breach that are seen here with the pushing, like defenestration in this game is the thing. You are okay, let me just rewind. This is the fucking tactics game. Where you are fucking wizards who are kind of like a military force in some way, kind of independent organization going after this like actual military organization and trying to undo the wrongs that this police force is doing. And you are moving into tight spaces where there are enemies against walls, against windows. The enemies have different abilities. You have different abilities, and you are trying to clear the room. And you can clear the room and complete objectives, or you can just clear the room and move on to the next room. Each room is contained like a little diorama, and you like move through in phases. So you've cleared this room, that's phase 1. Go to the next room, that's phase 2. Third room is like where the boss is or whatever. But there are windows, and if you can push the enemies out the window, it doesn't matter how much health they have, they're fucking done. And it's just like defenestration is the name of the game here. And the other thing that's neat about it is that you can rewind until you commit. You can rewind everything, so you can go all the way through the scenario in that first room or whatever. And then at the end, before you commit, it says there's a 4C button where you can see what's going to happen next. And you can see, oh, fuck, I didn't realize my guy was going to die, or they, whatever was going to happen. So I'm going to rewind everything and try a different thing. So you just get to rewind and try again until you've done it. You've optimized it the way that you want to optimize it. And sometimes there's a fucking great mechanic where optimizing it is actually not what you want to do. You actually want to die, because when you die, then something else happens. And it's like, oh, the cool thing I need to have happen, that I need to have happen, can only happen if I fuck this up. So I actually need to fuck it up. And it's just like, what the fuck? That is so wild. That is so wild. So the tactics part of this is superb. That alone, Anthony, you'd be like, this would have been on my fucking list. But that's not all. The writing is like, Thousand X Resist, I said, was the best narrative of the year. It is, absolutely. It's not the best writing, though. This game is the best writing, not just of the year. It's the best writing that I've seen in a video game 4 years. There is not a wasted fucking word before you breach the door to get into the scenario, and before you breach the door, your characters are at the door talking to each other. And I wish I had the fucking screenshots with me. I took so many screenshots, just like hilarious banter these characters have, just like talking shit about each other, talking shit about the situation, just remarking on how absurd everything is, and just being absurdist with their answers, and just being real and like emotional. And like, how we're watching, this is going to make sense. We're watching a show right now called Hacks. I don't know if you've heard of Hacks.
I have heard of it.
Okay, great. So it's a comedy, and like the best comedies are the most emotional shows. Like they really get to like the heart.
Sure.
And Hacks does that. This game does too. It's fucking hilarious. It's hilarious throughout. I think the guy said that one of his influences was we want to do like a SWAT tactical thing like Tom Clancy, but we want to have it written like it was written by Douglas Adams from Hitchhiker's Galaxy.
Oh, jeez.
Guide to the Galaxy.
Holy cow.
And that is what it is. It is. There's not a waste. There has not been a single word that has been like, oh, I don't know why this is too long. This is too much. You were talking about the economy of Unicorn Overlord story, like it's just enough to get going. This is the same thing. It's more than that. It's you want you want more conversation. There are optional things between missions that is just optional banter. There's no tactics. It's just banter. And it's like, and it tells you right up front, you can fucking ignore this. You do not need to know anything about this. It will not affect the story at all. But if you want to know more about your characters, go here. And it's just like more of their banter. And it's the best thing of the year. This game grabbed UFO 50 and threw it off my list. And that had been on my list most of the year. This game is incredible. I've probably put 6 hours into it, 5 hours maybe, maybe even less than that, to be honest. And like I said, it's a 12-hour game, and it has been exquisite. And I'm going to be sad when it's over, and I'm so excited that I have more to go. And I think the most exciting thing for me is going to be when you eventually play it this year, and you are just like,
Yep.
holy shit, yep, this is my shit, and I'm so glad I'm playing it. So Tactical Breach Wizards, it's by Suspicious Developments.
Yeah, I was looking. I was like, oh right, that's the guy who did Heat Signature and
Gunpoint, exactly.
Back in the day. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a good pedigree.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
I've been following it. I just, not that it's not on my radar. It's just so much to play. It didn't
Yeah, sure.
make it there, but yes, it's looked incredible for a long time.
It is everything you've heard.
Positive on Steam.
Yep.
Holy crap.
Everything you've heard. And you know, I played quite a bit of Gunpoint, and some of that tactic element in Gunpoint you can see coming through here. Kind of like you were saying about Larian, but you were talking about a different studio.
Yeah.
Tonight you said it. But basically, like, you know, you've seen them iterating on this idea over time, and this new game like nails it. Like this nails it, man. It's fucking great. But yeah, 2024 was stuffed with great games. So there's tons of games that were great that we didn't play. So this is one of them for you, you know, and Metaphor is one of them for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I will need to play this game. My number 3, which is crazy that this only made it to number 3. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah.
I really like the game a lot. We were talking about it. I won't go super deep into it since we spent an entire episode last week talking about it. I commend it for what it's doing. I am really engaged with the characters. I love what they've done with updating the characters for the remake Rebirth storyline. They nail that. They nail the combat. Absolutely adore their action combat, and I want to see that iterated on more and just brought into other modern Final Fantasies. It looks beautiful all the time. Running around the world is great. But with that being said, it's a bit too much game. It couldn't breach higher on my list. And the mini games drag it down a lot, and forcing you to do the mini games. If they didn't force me, it could probably be higher. But there are times when they just force you to do the mini games, and I'm like, I really don't, guys. Like, just, I really wish they would have improved those, but it doesn't really sour the overall experience for me too much. Just enough to be like, yeah, this is flawed. More flawed than like Remake was. I think Remake was a much more easier adaptation of the portion of the game that they were doing. This is a harder adaptation. I think they did a great job adapting it. It's just they're adapting something that's going to be really hard.
Yeah, it felt, you know, as I'm playing through that part in the original game right now, it was messy in the original game. So to see, I mean, I commend them for trying.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I feel like they could have. This is where my criticism, they could just cut it down. They didn't need to adapt the messy stuff. This would have been a time when they could go in and be like, this didn't land incredibly well. Let's change it. They're changing other things, so they can change it. But maybe they were just too beholden to the original on that aspect. But like I said, character-wise, it's incredible. I love the realization of your entire party in Rebirth. Just the personalities they have just come through so much more than text in the original game. And the original 7 stands up because people love the characters in that party over time. And it would have been so easy for them to screw that up in a remake. And they didn't. I think they actually just layered on more complexity to the characters in the right ways.
Right.
Speaking, I was actually telling my kids this, Red 13, Nanaki, that kind of reveal of like, oh, this is Red 13's real name and kind of backstory was one thing in 7, but the way they do it in Rebirth with his voice changing and like, oh, he's much younger and like more of an adolescent than isn't something you can really get out of just text. And I really appreciate that. I was like, oh, that's a neat twist, and I like how they're approaching that.
Well, the cool thing about that I learned, and maybe we talked about last week, maybe you taught me this and I forgot it was you, but that in the text in Japanese, you can see that because the way that youth versus older is denoted in Japanese, it was very clear to people playing this game back in the 90s in Japanese. Oh yeah.
And in Japanese, but of course not in English.
Not at all. There's no way that you could adapt that. And they probably were like, fuck, we're not going to do that. Even if they had thought about it. So now they get to right that wrong. So we're seeing what Japanese players saw in the 90s that we had no idea about, basically.
Yeah, because I don't remember any of that. I mean, 7's translation, original translation on the PS1 was not great.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't know any better, but I don't know. It was like, had some weird, like, changes to, like, not drinking alcohol, and they're not, like, weird references like that were changed. Like, but things at that time weren't known for their great localizations. So yeah, it's a nice change there. Like I said, back to the combat. It's a neat marriage of action combat that harkens back to the original game. The ATB system in the right way. It's still very action oriented, but it's very layered and a lot of fun to play. I had a blast learning the combat system, and especially as I pushed further into the game and doing like harder stuff just to try it. Yeah, I had to learn to do stuff pretty damn well and use dodging and blocking and perfect blocks, but then also the right abilities at the right time to get synergy at the right time and holding things back. It was great. It all worked. They built on Remake really well. This Remake didn't have synergy stuff, and I was like very worried. I was like, is this just another layer that's going to be more complicated? But I actually liked how it layered it in. And really got some fun moments with the characters during combat. The team ups were a nice touch compared to everyone just building to their limit breaks. So overall, that was great. And overall stories, I really enjoyed it. Like I think we mentioned last week, I think the ending is messy, but I really overall enjoyed the ride through the whole thing. And it's kind of amazing that they're doing these games. And at this quality bar, like these are expensive
the money
games.
They're spending. Holy shit, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to do this. I'm just like, okay. I don't think I ever need you to do this again. Swear. Ever. It's okay.
Yeah,
but I appreciate you at least trying it and just like bring one of these old PS1 games up to just like AAA quality game now.
I don't see how Game 3, which covers 2 discs, is going to be one game. I just don't get it.
We'll see. We'll see how they do this.
Tetralogy. They're like, nah, fuck it. We split it into 2.
Screw it. It has to be the 4. That's fine.
We talked to George R. Martin. We were like, oh, it's okay to split it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, yeah, sorry, we said trilogy. Nah, we're not. Retract that. Nah, we can't do it. You're like, that's fine. That's fine. Do what you need to do.
Yep. I could see it. I could also see him be like, no, fuck it. Nope. We were told we got one more.
Yeah. So that's my 3.
Awesome. My number 3 is something that was my number 2. Actually, it was my number 1 for a long time. But it slipped to 2, and recently it slipped to 3. And it is Helldivers 2. Nice. Helldivers 2 was an incredible experience for some of the reasons you mentioned earlier. The co-op experience, playing with friends. I put 33 hours into this game overall. 30 hours, 32 maybe even, were with friends. And the stories that emerge from the missions were not just thrilling, but also constantly hilarious. And it was hilarious for the most part because we kept fucking each other up. Mostly on accident. And every once in a while, you'd have someone who was pissed off that something was happening or liked to dish it out but couldn't take it. And that kind of ruined the experiences. But that was mostly didn't happen. It just happened towards the end, and I kind of stopped playing when that happened. So I was like, all right, this is not a game that you take that seriously. This game is not one of those games, and this is not working anymore. But when it was working, it was one of the best experiences of the year for me. Like the barely getting into the mission, the exit helicopter, the exit plane or whatever, just like diving in at the last second to get in, or trying to dive in and your friend accidentally dropped a grenade and killed you, and then it took off and you were left behind. That I was on both the receiving end and the person who did that to a friend. And just like flamethrower was one of my favorites, and just running around killing the bugs with the flamethrower, then accidentally lighting my friends on fire, like dropping fucking things on their heads. The stratagems, which were in Helldivers 1, I played Helldivers 1 and enjoyed it. The idea of putting the fucking Konami code basically for all the different kind of
it's so
things,
good.
It is brilliant. Like
genius.
Instead of running up to your friend and like holding X to revive them, you've got to, in the heat of battle, put in this complex fucking code to throw a Pokeball basically, so your friend comes back down to the fucking ground. It just added a level of engagement at all times, like calling in supplies, calling in fucking nukes, calling in a space laser. And then, as you said, continually adding to the meta narrative. We're like, we're all pushing together to get rid of this particular enemy, and oh no, they're taking over this sector. We've all got to jump in now. And, the ability to get rewards, even if you didn't play that mission or whatever, I would log in and constantly have, things to spend. I feel like the battle pass is pretty good. It's like $10 and you can unlock a lot of different things with the medals you get. That live service aspect has been well done.
And it never goes away.
Yeah, and it never goes away. You can keep just...
I learned about this. It never goes away, and you can buy any that they've ever done. Like
they're still there.
It's not a thing of, oh, I didn't buy this right now, I don't get it. And it's not a thing of, oh, I bought it but didn't play, so now I can't get things. It's like, no. Engage with it on your own, at your own pace and your own, however you're comfortable with it. That part I'm just like, well done. Like, I'm sure in 5 years that's going to be a mess for new players to be like, what do I want to buy?
But there's 50 battle passes here. What do I do here?
What do I do? But that's a future Arrowhead problem.
The only current problem they had around that was the battle pass thing or whatever, the cosmetics for
Killzone, right? Yeah.
They fucked. That was mainly Sony fucking that up for them, but
yeah.
It was just very expensive, and it was a different system than they had been doing for the other stuff. Whereas if they had the regular system, it would have been fine. So
sure,
at every step, whenever something went wrong, it was mostly Sony fucking it up. Not so much the nerfing of stuff and the metagaming of the balancing, but the monetization, the PSN requirement or whatever.
Yeah,
Sony kept stepping on Arrowhead's fucking feet here, or throwing rakes in their way. But for the most part, like, just a superlative multiplayer experience. I laughed more playing this game than anything this year, any show, anything. It was amazing. And I just recently got back into it with the same friends, and it was a lot of fun. So Helldivers 2 is number 3 on my list, and well deserved.
Very much.
Moving into number 2 here, and if you don't, can I make a guess on genre or a very general thing?
Sure.
If the top 2 of your list are not Atlas RPGs, I will be dead shocked.
I'm 3 games are Atlas on this top 5. I was like, Atlas, you had a good year. You had a great year.
What a year, man.
For it.
Yep.
But yeah, it's probably more the order that I went back and forth on quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
My number 2 is Persona 3 Reload.
Mm-hmm.
I had never experienced Persona 3 originally. Mostly I was going to, because I did play 4 after Royal, and I was like, I want more Persona, and I finished 4 and I enjoyed it, and I was like, I should go. You can get not really remakes, but a little bit more modernized Persona 3 portables on most systems now. It's on Steam. And I was like, oh, I could play that. And then they announced Reload, and I was like, I'm going to hold off. I'm going to make my first experience completely fresh, and it's going to be this remake. Not to be confused with the level of remake that Square's doing with Final Fantasy VII.
Right, yeah.
Persona 3 Reload is a much more constrained
Yep.
remake and done, I think, at a level I'm like, no, just do it. This is a good level. And it is the start of what we consider the modern Persona games. Personas 1 and 2 aren't at all like 3, as far as I know. 3 is where they bring in the social links,
exactly,
and all of that. Like, they make the time management matter and all of that. And it's great. It's what I want out of a Persona game, and what I've kind of, because I was introduced to it late. I didn't play these games when I was a teenager. So going into Reload, I don't really know what it's about, other than I'm like, yeah, there's like one big giant dungeon, and that's the thing. I'm like, okay, that's just like this thing in 5. 5 has a big giant dungeon that is side content for a while, but then you actually have to do it to beat the game. So cool. Let's see what Persona 3 is. It's the blue one, where 4 is yellow and 5 is red.
Yep.
And I was blown away. I love these characters. Again, we talk about, it's a bit more, I guess, kind of the age that it was made. And then even this remake, they don't try to like, build too much, like, more conversation and dialogue in it. It's very, really refined, very, not verbose at all in its dialogue. It's just like, nope, we're getting into it and we're just going. Like, not a ton of cutscenes, like, we're here and we're going, and you're just into the Persona loop. What am I doing to stay? Which contacts am I spending time with? Am I going to a dungeon? Am I doing a mini game to like improve my stats? Am I trying to make money? The key thing that I learned from it playing it is it's darker than the other ones by a lot.
Yeah.
And it deals with some pretty serious themes and things going on, a lot about life and death and mourning. They do a really good job of, when you're playing, of realizing that you're coming into this, but a number of the characters have known each other for a long time, and they have a history, and you start learning that history as you play, and starting getting integrated into that group. But like, what you learn in the past and everything is actually, it's shocking sometimes. It's sad. A lot of times, a lot of broken people in this game. It is the game where people use fake guns to shoot themselves in some personas. They didn't pull that out for this. And they do explain that as time goes on. Like, they did, to summon a persona requires like an act of a display of sacrifice, basically, of that strong of emotion. But it stuck with me. The ending really stuck with me. I was like, I kind of can't believe it ends this way.
Do you mind if we talk about the ending and spoilers for people who?
Yeah, stay away from spoiler. I was not expecting where this was going. Yeah, your main character, you die. You give up your life, basically, to save everybody. But not immediately. Like, you make the choice in the final dungeon of being like, not choice, like, you've done this. You could end the game early if you want. You could do the bad ending if you want. But in the final fight, there's a point where it's like, you have to give, as a character, like, you will give your all to destroy this. And you do, and you effectively only have a few months of life left. And the game ends with you, basically, like, falling asleep and dying, with all your friends around you.
And that whole thing right there, because when I was listening to Giant Bomb or something like that, and they're talking about their games of the year, and they talked about that in the detail that you just did, and I was like, fuck, I want to play that game. That sounds amazing.
A lot.
Well, and that's why I want to ask you, because I bought it and I'm really interested in it. But thinking back to like our Elden Ring discussion,
yeah,
like, is it like so depressing that you like walk away depressed, or is it more like, wow, that's like a noble sacrifice?
It's bittersweet.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a bittersweet ending because you have sacrificed so much, but like, it ends in like the last things that you see, in quotes, while playing the game, because they do it from your perspective as you're like laying there, like exhausted, with Aegis around you, talking to you, and like everyone's okay. We passed the point of like, I don't remember what the specific date was, but there's a date like if you do this and it's right, and on this other date, everything will be okay. And it's like everything is okay. And so as your friends are all super happy and they're coming to your normal rooftop at the school to meet, they all burst through the door, and that's kind of like the last thing you see.
Wow.
But they're all happy. Everyone's alive and happy, and their lives are well.
Got it.
But you don't get to see it. You're gone. And then the DLC, the answer is not your character. You're Aegis in that.
I just think that sounds so fucking well done.
Yeah.
God, and like so affecting. Like I immediately was like, okay, I got to get back to that game because I put 5 hours into it at the beginning of the year and stopped because I don't like Tartarus or whatever that's called, the dungeon.
Yeah, Tartarus. You have to. I mean, they do get to a point where it's pretty. You do have to go through it. I got pretty fast about going through it, and even the grind was really fast when I wanted to just grind it. Mm-hmm. But you have to get there and get optimized to do it. But yeah, I really enjoyed that game a lot. It was affecting. I'm glad I waited until we had this remake version of it. It makes me excited because I think this did well enough that we'll probably get a Persona 4 remake.
Yeah, sure.
I don't see why Atlas would hold off on that. I know 4 is a lot of people's favorite.
Yep.
But this one was just, it was really neat. I think there's going to be one. There's one contact one that is, I mean, you can play it however you want. But it's basically, you're like, what if your confidant is just like a little girl at a playground whose parents are going through a divorce?
Yeah.
And like, you're having to like try to navigate that because she's having like feelings for you, and you're like, you can't engage with him. The game doesn't let you.
Thank God.
But it's like, but you do have to kind of like engage in the fact that like there's probably abuse at home, and like parents are like neglecting her, ignoring her. Like that's a harder one where it's like, this one's feels a little of the time it was made,
yes, exactly.
In some ways, but I'm like, it's not completely crossing lines, but it's definitely edging up against things of being like, yeah, this is a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that's the problem that I've had with the Persona games in general is like those things existing in 3, 4, and 5 and like just not being able to get there, but I want to push through this year. I want to get.
Also, you could just not do that confidant, which is, well, there's
nice.
nothing that, there's no reason. You can ignore confidants in the game. Like, it just, like, especially those, they're not part of your team. So ignoring them really just reduces some of, like, certain types of personas you have. Like, you won't get, like, an XP bonus whenever you fuse new personas of that type. But it's minimal. You don't have to maximize confidants.
Good. I can stay away from
playing the game. Just focus on your team more. This is the most important.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But then you can. You're like, no, this is not.
That's a bridge too far. I'm not going there.
Yeah. The game does not punish you for that.
That's good. Well, I plan on digging. I hope. Yeah. As I dig into that, you dig into Tactical Breach Wizards.
Yeah.
You can swap this year.
But yeah, 3 is really good. It is one where I'm like, yeah, I know it's this should have been also on like best narrative at the Keeley's compared to if like Rebirth and stuff is there and Silent Hill 2 is there. It's like, this should be there. Like, this is a really good narrative. So that was number 2. You can probably guess number 1.
I absolutely can. I bet you can guess my top 2 as well.
Yes.
And I know you know the order. So
yes.
number 2 was a game that was, I was very excited to start. I started around May. It then probably 40 hours in, was like, nope, this ain't going to be on my list. I'm going to stop playing it. And then I got back to it, and it crawled from outside of honorable mentions to my top 5 to my number 2, and it is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I am a full Final Fantasy VII sicko at this point. But we talked a lot last week about Rebirth, and you said a lot of things today as well. I won't repeat a lot of them, but I will say that Remake is probably one of my top 5 favorite games of all time because of the story, the characters, the combat, the way it was all engaging throughout. And it really, for being a long game, everything felt essential. Rebirth is not that. Rebirth has some of those things, like the wonderful character moments, to be honest, and can't imagine how this happened. I really like Kate Sith by the end. They did a good job with that story, which means they did a good job with all the characters. Nanaki was really great. Even though these characters I didn't really have in my party, I was a very strict Cloud, Aerith, Tifa. That was my party.
That was my party as well, towards the end, especially in the end. I had Yuffie for a while as well, because Yuffie is just really good.
She is, and I'm glad that the game made me play with other characters throughout, because I learned how to play them and had a good time with them as well, but I would still not choose them if I had a choice. Yeah. There were great story moments, like the end of chapter 10, I believe, where Cloud throws Tifa into the fucking Mako, was just so affecting to me. I really liked a lot of the Costa del Sol stuff. I just fucking hated the mini games and some of the open world stuff. But now I'm playing Final Fantasy VII. I picked it back up again just last night. I've been stuck in Junon since 2020. And I opened it up last night and I'm like, you know what? The way these maps are constructed, it's like Junon in Rebirth. So if I just keep going left, I think I'm going to get to the next story beat. And I did. I was like, holy shit, I was never stuck. I just didn't know I could leave the map. But then I get to the gold saucer and it's like, oh, this was a big part of the original. I see why this is a big part of Rebirth. Now I intellectually get it. And I feel like it had to be here, even though it drug the fucking game down so bad for me, to the point where I put it down. But when I came back to it and slogged through that and got into chapter 10, 11, 12, moving on to the date and toward the Temple of the Ancients, and then the final chapter, it was singing. And the thing that is missing from me, that is inside of you and other people who enjoyed Final Fantasy VII in 97, was how hard Aerith's death hit you. And to be able to re-experience that huge emotional hit was robbed from all of you in Rebirth. And that has got to suck. That is such a bad, we talked about last week, just a sloppy way to, I think, inevitably tell the story of how in 7, Aerith's spirit is still there to protect the world from Meteor. But how do we show that? We're going to personify that spirit, and Aerith is still kind of there, even though she's really not for anyone else. Yeah. But God, it really sucked the emotion out of most of that, even though I still cried several times at the end. I really, by the end, fell in love with Aerith, and I am a huge Tifa stan. So I was just like, what's happening? This storytelling is, at the character level, still superb. And then as I was getting towards the end of the game, starting to realize, I need better materia. I need to level up some of these, learn some of these weapon abilities. I should go back to the open world and do more things, and started to do a lot of the things that I had pushed off and didn't want to do. And some of the things like Kid G, I was like, I definitely don't want to do these things for very, very important reasons. This stuff sucks.
Stupid Kid G.
God damn. So being able to walk away from the things that sucked, but then recognizing now how much of this stuff was in the original, and they're paying homage to it, and it's all good, but I think you said it best earlier. It's too much game. It should have had 25% whacked off. We still would have got the same idea. So I'm interested to see how they put that into practice for what's next. And it will be interesting for me because I'm going to finish the original before the next one comes out. So I will finally have a reference point of what came before as I step into what's next. And very cool. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth shot to number 2 over the past maybe 2 months. It's just a wonderful experience to have after Remake. This has been the year of Final Fantasy for me, and I can see you go back and read like classic novels and you're like, oh, I can kind of see why people like these things. I don't really like it very much, but I get it for the time or whatever. Like Final Fantasy is fucking special. Like Final Fantasy is becoming a series I'm nostalgic about, and I only really got into it this year. So it feels fucking weird, but it's great. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is number 2 on my list.
All right. To no surprise, my number 1 is Metaphor Re Fantasio. I finished this 2 days ago?
Yeah, pretty recently.
Finally. I did so much finishing that game. Like once I got back in, I was in. This is the Persona game. It's not Persona 6, but it is a Persona game that has decided that, like, hey, we see what Personas 3, 4, and 5 are. Let's do something else and take that formula and clean it up. Like, because this is very much still a Persona formula of a game. You have a calendar, you have a day and a night where you can do different things and spend time with your different characters, do different activities, limited time. Combat is very Persona-like. Weaknesses, elemental aspects going on. The key part is it's all of that, but they distilled it into like a much purer form. And then they're just like, here's a crazy fantasy story. I don't know how much you really want spoilers in some of this.
No, please. I mean, for me, I like spoilers
because it's a fantasy game, but it's also a post-apocalyptic game.
Mm-hmm.
This is Earth a long time in the future, but it also may not be. It actually might be you just reading a fantasy story as well. It's the metaphor. I mean, it's a metaphor. The whole thing. This is not a team that likes to obfuscate what they're saying and be really obtuse. They're like, no, it's a metaphor. So much of this game is a metaphor on so many levels, story wise and thematically, and we're just going to call it metaphor because of that. But it has neat plot twists. I thought, like, oh, is this going to be dumb getting to like this like fantasy election kind of thing? But it has a lot to say in how people come to, I wouldn't even say admire, but put on politicians on pedestals and people of power in weird ways at times. There's a lot of commentary on that, and it's very relevant for the current day and age. There's a lot of relevant stuff in this. A lot to say about racism and prejudice, and I don't feel like it drops the ball on that. It touches the stuff very well. It touches it through the characters that you're actually like engaging with, and their hardships and what they're going through. Unlike Persona 3, though, this is not a sad game overall. It's very, very hopeful. Beating it, I was very happy with the ending and like how the characters all developed and where it ended. It felt nice, wrapped up, and it was like, even with my like grinding out extra stuff, because I was like, man, I really want to spend time. I want to get like all my characters. They're like, they don't call them personas in this. They're archetypes. I wanted to get them their royal archetypes, which is like the best that they can be, because I maxed all my confidants with my party. Mm-hmm. They can get this one thing and it's like really good. I was like, I'm going to grind for that. It took me like 4 or 5 hours to get everybody's maxed, and it was great, but it put my time played at like 90 hours as opposed to 80. Yeah, sure. Like, but still, I mean, like, it's a 90-hour game, but that's like 30 to 40 hours less than a Persona game. And that felt a lot better. And I think a lot of people could get through this game in like probably 60 hours, 70 hours. And that makes it feel, I think, a much more, simpler.
It's less daunting.
It is less daunting. They also, the timing wise, like I had a bunch of extra days at the end of the game. I had like 18 days where I was just I don't know. I've maxed all my confidants. I've maxed all my stats, my social stats. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do things, I guess. So they give you, it felt like you could be pretty unoptimized and still see most everything this game had.
That's cool. I feel like the Persona games are like you're down to the last day trying to grind and max.
Yeah. And again, this is a quality of life change that's helped in that formula, being like, hey, let's relook at what we've done. I mean, this is the core 3 team that has done 3, 4, and 5. Doing this, and it definitely felt like them being introspective of the games that they had made and how they would want to move forward with that type of a game and those mechanics. And that works, and it landed really well for me. I can't believe Atlas has 3 games on this list. Atlas was doing great work this year.
Wild year. They had just great shit.
And I don't know if they have a lot coming out in 25, honestly.
I mean, surely an announcement of Persona 6, but not like...
Yeah, I know. Everyone's rumored Persona 6 is in work. With a new team is the thing. Like, it's not the team that was doing Metaphor. Like, it's a new... Probably, I think some of the people that had been working on, like, especially 4 and 5, were being promoted to work on 6. Trying to get that new generation in. So... Yeah, for me, it landed completely and totally. I will remember these characters quite well for a long time. Man, it was a lot of fun. It was a journey, and I'm glad I took it. It was surprising. There's a lot of some neat, surprising story twists that really landed for me. It's weird. It's a weird fantasy.
That's nice to see it as opposed to like a regular, fantasy story we've seen 100 times.
It's not a Western fantasy at all.
Yeah, right.
It is its own thing. But yeah, really, really enjoyed it. And I was going back and forth pretty hard if it was Persona 3 or Metaphor. Really until about last night. And I was like, nah, probably. I think Metaphor gets it just on the fact that it is a revision of the formula. And you talk about the grinding. I talk about the grinding. The key part to this is once you're a couple levels above an enemy, it has an action combat to initiate your turn-based battles. But if you're a couple levels above an enemy and you action combat and hit them, you just kill them.
That's great.
And you get the experience and everything. Like, it doesn't penalize you. You just can run around and just like smack things and just get experience.
You cut down the time that it takes to do
so much. And you're like, and I'm sure that there's people like, oh, but that's not really playing, like, you're not doing the turn-based combat. I'm like, no, you have to do the turn-based combat for plenty of in the game. But why make a person do the turn-based combat whenever they're so high level it doesn't matter? Like, it's just going to be a trivial fight. And that's a lot of fun. It was really good. I'm very happy this game turned out well. Well, I know your number one game won a bunch of Game of the Year awards. I think Metaphor has won a few now.
Yeah, I've heard it top a number of lists. Astrobot's, I think, garnered the most, but Fantasia or Metaphor.
GameSpot gave it Game of the Year.
Yeah.
And I think IGN, maybe?
IGN did, yes.
Yeah, there's like a few of these sites I was like, oh, I figured it was going to Astrobot. But,
well, I think a lot of the sites, I think it's interesting is if it's not on PC, not everyone at that site plays it.
True. That is true.
That was
Metaphor was across everything.
It was. Yep. So I think if Astrobot was on PC, maybe it would have been more likely, but some people just don't play anything that's not on PC at those sites. So, and they've said that. So that does influence what ultimately wins.
Yeah. So that was my number one, and I'm pretty sure I know your number one.
So I'm going to take you back to 90, maybe 92. And we have, it was like a Nintendo Power Strategy Guide of Mario 3. And my mom had gotten it. We didn't have the game. I assume this was the time when Mario 3 came out in Japan, but it hadn't come out in America yet. I don't I'm trying to line up the time in my mind, and I don't know. All I know is we don't have the game, and it's either we can't afford the game or it's not out yet. But we have the strategy guide. So my brother, my mom, and I, like, for weeks and weeks and weeks, every night we look through that strategy guide. I'm like with a pencil, like drawing my path through the level, just dreaming about Mario 3. And eventually we get Mario 3 and we play the fucking shit out of it as a family. And it's been my favorite game of all time for a very long time. Partially because it's just well designed. Like there's so much variety to the game, but also just that family experience. Like I don't have very many positive family memories, and this is one of them. Like we had joy around Mario 3 for a very long time. And I still revisit it from time to time, and just, it's still there. That game is still amazing. It is no longer my favorite game of all time. My favorite game of all time is Astrobot now. It is not just my game of the year this year. It is my favorite game I've ever played. It is the pinnacle of any game I've ever played for many of the same reasons. It is superb. It is superbly designed. Like the way that the platforming works is very simple. It's very elegant. There are multiple ways to get through the level. There are secrets abound, both secret exits to the game and also just different ways to path through the level. And then obviously the bots. Some of the bots are regular bots. Some of the bots are PlayStation-themed bots. A lot of the criticism I've heard about Astrobot is that it's an advertisement for PlayStation and it plays on your nostalgia. I don't have nostalgia for PlayStation. I started playing PlayStation and PS4. I don't know most of the characters that are coming up that I'm picking up. I love this game because of what this game is and what it presents. It is pure joy. It is absolute fun from beginning to end. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Every single level is designed around a theme. Some levels give you a power-up that lasts just that level and they never bring it back again. So they don't iterate on it. It's just, here it is and it's gone. And it's like something I always talk about with wine, where wine is my favorite alcohol because once you drink that, it's gone. You don't get that same vintage ever again. It could be the same grape. It could be a cab from the same vineyard the next year, but it doesn't taste the same. That, even in the same, case, like it tastes slightly different. And that wine is gone. That level, you've played it, you'll never play it again. You'll never have that experience again. I played it by myself at night when my family was asleep. And then in the mornings or in the weekends, that's all my daughter wanted to play too. So we would play through what I had already played through. And she mostly played, had hands on the sticks. And I was just there to coach her through some things or help her every once in a while when she needed help. But eventually, it turned from a game that my daughter and I played together to a game that my daughter and my wife played together. And my wife would just be watching her playing. And then eventually when the DLC shit came out, when the speedrun levels came out, we started every week. It was or I think it was every week that it came out. I think it was the pace was at weekly. But every time the speedrun came out, we would have Mom play the game. And she fucking sucked at it so bad. And it just took forever for her. And then she finally beat the level, and then we would repeat the process. And it was just such a fun time. And then my wife finally understood that these are speedrun levels for people who are sickos. And actually, if you go back and play the game from the beginning, you learn how to play the game, and it's not as fucking brutal. And she was like, wait, this game is teaching me how to play. Like, yeah, is. Team Asobi designed this to be like someone's first game. It's yours. So she went back and she's currently through like World 3 or whatever. But she is enjoying playing the game. It's the only game that we've all played as a family, other than, we've played Mario Kart as a family, but like this is another level where my wife is like kind of interested in playing this game even on her own. And then, today at Awesome Games Done Quick, she sat and watched most of Astrobot with us, and she was just like, holy shit, you can do that in this game? Like, yep, if you're really good at it, you can. So the idea of the joy that it brings a family is something that was with Mario 3 was true and is true with this now. And then add to it the way that I forget the main guy at Asobi at the Game Awards, who was basically like, yeah, we tried to do our best Nintendo impression here. Thank God for Nintendo. We love Nintendo.
Yeah.
Like, this is like Mario Galaxy 3. I like this game more than Odyssey, like by a mile. This game is, I think, better constructed. It is more coherent in the different levels. Odyssey is an amazing accomplishment, and this is just miles better than it, which is incredible for a platformer, which is my favorite genre of game, which is why this is my favorite game of all time, because it's my favorite fucking platformer of all time now. But it is meaningful from the way that it's constructed down to the memories that it's created in my house. I will forever look at that little mascot and just be in love with what it did. And in such a short time, it came out in fucking September. Like, we didn't know about it until May in that PlayStation Direct, and it just took my house by storm. And it was so amazing to watch my daughter, who, as I said earlier, like bounces from game to game to game, just like me, and just could not stop playing Astrobot, and then restarted it, and is now going through with her mom and helping her mom. And there's still more for us to do. We have not gotten every bot. We have not finished the final level. The secret level, I mean. So there's still more to this game that we haven't done yet, that I'm so excited that is still ahead of us. And I can't imagine there's not more coming. Like, there's no Final Fantasy anywhere in this game.
Yeah.
And either Square is stupid, or there's more to come, or I don't fucking know.
Yeah. I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
I'm like, not all Final Fantasies need to be there, especially, but I am shocked there's not a Cloud, a Tifa, and Aerith Barrett, like the 7 characters specifically.
Well, especially when there's a Buster Sword.
Also, Clive 16 stuff, I would expect as well.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a Buster Sword in Astro's Playroom.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's not an agreement that it made before.
So I don't know. That's always been a weird one, but you're right. There's probably more coming. Let's be honest.
There's got to be. And so anyway, this game is very much like the heart of the team. Like, the Japan studio got wiped from the face of the earth, but people from Japan studio came into Team Asobi, and the first level, the first galaxy, at the end of every galaxy, there's a PlayStation theme level. First galaxy, the PlayStation theme level is Ape Escape, which was created by Japan Studio. People from Japan Studio is now at Asobi, so they're making an Ape Escape game, level, in Astrobot, and it's just got to be like emotionally charged in some way to be making Ape Escape or Loco Roco, and being team members who were part of an important studio that no longer exists. But the spirit is living on here. Yeah, dude, I mean, Astrobot won Game of the Year. I cried. Listening to the guy's speech, I fucking cried. Like, this game means so much to me and my family, and it's incredible to me that Mario 3 could be dethroned. And it's so amazing, because Mario 3 has been the top of gaming for me for 30 years, 35 years, 32 years, something like that. And for it to be taken over is kind of how it goes. Like, that, you introduce your hobby to your kids and you get invested in it, and there's something new and something different, something fun, and you get to relive those memories, but in a better way. And that's what this has brought for me and my family. And it's just, that emotional piece is important, but the game itself, without any of that, would still be my game of the year. It probably wouldn't be my game of all time, but it would still be my game of the year. And it's just, I hope that you get a chance to play it at some point. You're not sure as into platformers as I am, but it's something to play.
I mean, my kids, I'm actually expecting that one of my kids will buy it here at some point. I'll just tangentially have it in the house.
Yeah.
Because they were like, watching the speedrun. They're like, this looks neat.
Oh man, I think your daughter would really like it.
Yeah. She's all in a Pokemon right now. So
interesting.
She went back. She's like, no, I have Sword. This is the last one I have. She's like, I'm playing Sword. I'm restarting and I'm going to do it. And she is doing it.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know. It just, but she has a bunch of other Zelda games to play now because she got those for Christmas. So she has Hyrule Warriors to play, the first one, and
Skyward Sword, right?
And Skyward Sword, yes.
Yeah.
She's like, combat in Skyward Sword is weird. And I'm like,
Oh,
yes,
God.
it is.
Oh, my God. It really is.
This is our game of the year. So if my calculations are right, tracking these, we have a tie for first. 3 games.
We do?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. You might be right. Oh, shit.
Metaphor got 5. Astrobot got 5. FF7
And Rebirth
Rebirth
got 5.
got 3 and 2 between the two of us for 5.
Oh, my God. Well, fuck. Oh, no. Okay. Okay, this might be the first year where we can't do it mathematically. Holy shit. We have a tie. We've never had a tie before.
We have a 3-way tie.
Is our game of the year the one that we share? Or
I don't think so. I don't think it deserves it.
Yeah. Oh, fuck, man. What do we do?
What do we do?
Is this where we duke it out? That's not going to work because we didn't play the other game.
I know. I know.
You know what I would say, though? I would say that if you had played Astrobot and I had played Metaphor, I think I would feel more strongly about Metaphor than you would about Astrobot.
I don't think you're wrong, but I also like... this is hard. Yes, I can say Rebirth should not be number 1. I think it's 3 and 2 for us for a reason. It is not it's neither one of our favorite game of the year.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't even know in the hypothetical world where Astrobot would be in my top. I mean, it would be in my top 5 probably if I played it. For sure.
I mean, I played the demo of Metaphor. So Metaphor would be... It would probably be 4 on my list. Maybe 3. I don't know, yeah.
Because Helldivers 2 was your 3, correct?
It was, yeah. I don't think it would, just because of the multiplayer experience.
I don't think it's getting above, I'm not thinking it's getting above 1 and 2 for you at all.
No, I don't think so.
And Astrobot would have definitely kicked off Balatro, most likely. Because just, again, well-crafted game. Yeah, Astrobot would probably have been... In my weird thought on it, watching it would probably be somewhere either 4 or 5 on my list.
Yeah, and that's where Metaphor would be for me.
Yeah.
Wow, fuck. We didn't think about this before we got on the mic.
We have a tie. It's a tie.
We have a tie. All right.
Those two, and I think they're worth it.
That's wonderful. I think that actually is fittingly perfect for this year, because there were so many unexpectedly amazing games this year that to have Metaphor and Astrobot be our game of the year for 2024 makes so much sense.
Yeah, and then Rebirth is right below it, honestly.
Yeah.
I think it actually weirdly puts Persona 3 Reload right below that, because it was 4 for me. Rebirth was 2. It was... Because your 2, which would have been 4 points, was...
Oh, you know what?
Or did I do this wrong?
You did the math wrong. Yeah.
I did the math wrong. Sorry.
Yeah.
I did the math wrong.
Yeah. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is second for me, so that's 4 points.
4 points. Sorry. So no, it is number 1. It is 7. I was dumb. I was going low point.
You know what, though? I know we've always done it mathematically.
Yeah.
So mathematically, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is our game of the year. That's what I thought it would be, because that's the only one that we share.
Yeah, I just don't think it is. I don't think it should be.
I don't think it is this year. I think we end up in the tie. I think we have Astrobot and Metaphor as our game of the year. And Rebirth can be a runner-up.
Yeah, I just...
Let's break. It's our podcast. Agree. Let's break tradition.
But I mean, going down I think that is correct. It doesn't need to be pure mathematical, because this is purely subjective as well. And I just don't feel good with Rebirth being it's not the best game this year. It wasn't. I loved it, but it's not the best game.
Exactly.
It's not even the best RPG I played. So that's why I'm like,
Well, and I think it's interesting because this is the conversation that is happening across podcasts that I've listened to. It's just like, it was so good and then so bad. Like it was, it was not the best, but at points it was the best. Like, oh, it's hard to determine.
It has some really high highs, but it has some really low lows.
Yeah, and I haven't played much of Metaphor, but Astrobot didn't have any lows. There wasn't a single.
Didn't really. There was like one dungeon in Metaphor that I was like, oh my god, this is big. But if I was playing it now, I'd realize that I have extra time and I don't need to do it in one go, and they're not expecting me to do it in one go. So I could have taken multiple days of exploring it in game, and that would have probably changed my entire experience with that dungeon.
Yeah.
Because I was playing it like a Persona game of being like, no, I have to play this the most optimal way. If I go into a dungeon and I don't finish it in one day, then I've screwed up. It's like, not in this game. This game, you have plenty of extra time. Don't worry about it. No, its lows are, I would never say, I don't think it has any particularly bad lows or anything. It's like, at worst, you're like, no, that's fine. Not the FF7 rebirths of, oh my god, stop, please.
Yeah, exactly. If you're not going to stop, I'm going to stop. Wow.
Yeah,
something that's never happened before.
Yeah.
It's Metaphor and Astrobot, Game of the Year. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as a runner-up, also as the mathematical Game of the Year, but we are not doing that this year because 2024 threw us a bunch of curveballs, so we'll do two. Holy shit.
The one game I didn't play that I want to play that I've been seeing on people's lists a lot was Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah, true.
Mostly I had a coworker that says, like, you just get to punch fascists, and it's awesome. And if you have subtitles on, a lot of the enemies, when they talk, it's just fascist. It's the character name.
Awesome.
I'm like, I need to play this.
Yeah.
I had a coworker who I didn't expect that would actually like it or play. He's like, no, it's really fun. And there's a lot of like incredibly well done polish to the game, to the combat, and lots of one-off stuff. He's like, I'm probably never going to see this unique animation ever again. But they just did it here, and it feels so Indiana Jones.
That's so cool.
So I'm like, yeah, I probably should play that at some point.
I've had a similar thought, but because I've never seen a single movie in that.
Oh, really?
Never. I'm going to watch the movies first. The first three, I should say. But I think that's a game I want to play.
Watch the first one.
Oh, yeah, just watch one. That'll do it.
That'll do it. That will set you up. I don't particularly like 2.
Okay.
Three is very fun. I would say 3 with Sean Connery in it is fun.
Yeah.
But 1 is the, like, Raiders of the Lost Ark is, I mean, it's on a list of movies of, like, best movies ever made. And it holds up. It's a lot of fun. But wouldn't watch with your daughter yet.
No. That'll be by myself.
Yeah. We waited a while before showing kids that. But yeah, all right.
We did it. We fucked it up, and we unfucked it up.
Yeah, I fucked it up, and I was like, no, you're not. That's not 2. That's 4.
No, I was like, yeah, you're right. That's it. No, that's wrong. Okay, so again, Game of the Year is Metaphor Refantasio and Astrobot with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, a respectable runner-up. Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. If you liked it, please rate it on your podcast service of choice. Tell a friend. Next week, we are going to be back doing our Fantasy Critic Draft for 2025. And we will cover the results of the Fantasy Critic 2024, whether or not Anthony wants to. I want to.
Yeah.
And then the week after that, we'll be doing our predictions for 2025. Probably before then, we'll hear something from Nintendo, but who knows?
We'll see.
We'll see. All right, folks, thanks for sticking with this very long podcast, and we will see you next week.
Later, everyone.